The cameras flashed like lightning bolts across a dark sky. The world watched as Prince Harry, the so-called rebel royal, stepped up to the microphone with a calmness that didn't match the storm brewing behind his eyes. His voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the gravity of what he was about to say. He looked down, took a breath, and uttered the words that would send shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, through the press, and through every loyal subject of the crown. "It was never meant to be William," he said quietly, almost like a confession. "It's King Charles's decision, and he chose me." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For a moment, the air froze. The reporters blinked. The murmurs died. It was as if the entire world had collectively forgotten how to breathe. What did Harry mean by that? Was it another jab at the monarchy? A metaphor for the burden of royal duty? Or had the Duke of Sussex just revealed something no one ever expected to hear? That the future of the British monarchy had been rewritten in secret? Every generation has its royal scandal. The abdication crisis, Diana's tell-all interviews, the Megxit drama. But this was different. This was succession itself, the sacred order of kingship, now being called into question by the very prince who'd walked away from it. And if what Harry hinted was true, the implications were earth-shattering. Because this wasn't about money, image, or revenge. It was about the crown itself. Let's take a step back. How did we get here? How did the younger son, once dismissed as the spare, become the center of a conversation that could alter the destiny of the United Kingdom? It started long before his marriage, before his exile, even before the Netflix deals and California sunshine. It began in the quiet corridors of Kensington Palace, in whispers behind closed doors, in the lingering shadow of his mother, Diana, the people's princess. Many forget that Diana once made a cryptic remark to a close friend, "Harry's the one with my heart. He understands people." Some took it as a sentimental statement, others as a mother's natural affection. But insiders now believe she meant something deeper. Diana reportedly believed Harry would be a more compassionate ruler than William, who she feared might be consumed by royal duty rather than empathy. Those words, once dismissed as emotional musings, now hang like prophecy. Harry grew up knowing his place, second, always second. But he also grew up watching how the system broke his mother, how it turned love into spectacle and grief into headlines. And in that pain, something grew inside him, a desire not to repeat the same mistakes, a desire to change the rules. Still, no one could have predicted that decades later, he would stand on a global stage and imply that the king himself had changed those rules for him. It didn't happen overnight. The signs were subtle at first: secret meetings, canceled royal engagements, quiet absences from public appearances. Rumors swirled that Charles and William had fallen out over strategic differences, though palace aides denied it. But the timing was too perfect, too suspicious. Harry's sudden confidence in speaking about new beginnings and reshaping tradition didn't come out of nowhere. Something had shifted, something deep within the royal institution. Imagine the pressure of carrying a secret that could destroy your family but define your destiny. Imagine knowing that your father, the king, had made a decision that could end a 1,000-year line of succession as the world knew it. Would you stay silent? Or would you do what Harry did, speak out, and let the chips fall where they may? Harry's revelation didn't come in a formal statement. It came through fragments, interviews, memoir hints, offhand comments that seemed innocent until you put them together, like a puzzle forming a forbidden image. During a recent appearance, he was asked about his relationship with his father. Instead of deflecting, Harry leaned forward and said, "My father and we've spoken about things no one else knows. Things that will change everything when the time comes." That line went largely unnoticed, until now. Because the time Harry spoke of may already be here. Sources close to the palace claim that Charles, facing persistent health rumors, has privately drafted an updated succession plan. One that deviates from the expected order. One that, in his words, reflects the true spirit of the monarchy, not just its form. It's said that Charles sees in Harry the same charisma, empathy, and public connection that once defined Diana, traits that could heal the monarchy's fractured image. Meanwhile, William, ever the dutiful heir, is described as too controlled, too institutional. The irony? The very discipline that made William the ideal future king may now be his undoing. As this story unfolds, one can't help but notice the poetic symmetry. The son once called the rebel, now being considered as the redeemer. But is it true? Did Charles really make such a drastic decision? Or is this just another example of Harry's complex relationship with the truth, his tendency to blend personal grievance with grand narrative? That's what makes this moment so gripping. The uncertainty, the emotional undercurrent, the possibility that the monarchy's future has already been quietly decided behind closed doors. And the world has questions. What would this mean for William and his children? Would the British Constitution even allow such a move? How would the people react? Those who saw William as Diana's rightful heir in spirit, and those who now see Harry as her living echo. Every question leads to another, and each one cuts deeper than the last. You might be wondering, why would King Charles risk everything for Harry? Why would he overturn centuries of order, tradition, and expectation? Perhaps it's not just about who deserves to rule, but who can survive it. Charles has seen firsthand what royal life did to Diana, what it's done to both his sons. Maybe, just maybe, he believes that in a world of viral outrage and digital monarchy, Harry, the man who has lived outside the palace walls, might be the only one capable of saving it. The irony is delicious, isn't it? The same prince accused of betraying the crown may now be its chosen savior. The man once exiled could become the one to carry the scepter. It's Shakespearean in scope, betrayal, family, redemption, all rolled into one royal tragedy. And yet, as with all things royal, nothing is ever straightforward. For every insider claiming this plan exists, another swears it's fabrication, designed to test the loyalty of those around the king. Still, there's one detail no one can explain away: the sudden increase in Harry's private meetings with senior constitutional advisors. Lawyers, historians, and even a retired archbishop have reportedly met with him in recent months. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe it's preparation, not for reconciliation, but for coronation. The British public isn't naive. They've learned to read between the palace lines. They saw how carefully worded Charles's last public statement was. The one where he referred to both my sons, who will play vital roles in ensuring the stability of the monarchy. Most people heard that and moved on. But those words, vital roles, might have been far more literal than anyone imagined. Still, this revelation doesn't just threaten royal order, it threatens family. William's fury, insiders say, is volcanic. The bond between brothers, once unbreakable, now nearly unsalvageable, has reached its lowest point yet. And if Charles really did tell Harry something about the future of the throne, that fracture could turn into a full-blown war. A war not fought with swords, but with words, lawyers, and public opinion. There's also the matter of Camilla. The Queen Consort's influence cannot be understated. She has been Charles's closest confidant for decades, and her opinion reportedly carries significant weight. Some claim she warned Charles against changing tradition, fearing it would destroy what little public trust remains. Others whisper that she supports it, not out of affection for Harry, but because she knows the monarchy needs a modern face to survive. Either way, her silence is strategic, and silence, in the royal world, speaks volumes. Now, imagine being William. Imagine watching your younger brother, the one who fled, being pulled back into the center of the stage, not as a disgraced prince, but as a potential successor. The humiliation, the disbelief, the heartbreak. Every photo op, every handshake, every speech. Suddenly cast under suspicion. Because in the monarchy, power isn't inherited. It's confirmed. The press has already gone into overdrive. Some headlines declare Harry's mad delusion of grandeur. Others suggest Charles is merely preparing a contingency plan in case William steps aside. But the real story isn't in the headlines. It's in the silence between them. No royal spokesperson has denied Harry's words. No official correction has been issued. Buckingham Palace, usually quick to control narratives, remains eerily quiet. And that silence, in itself, might be the loudest confirmation of all. Every great royal drama begins with whispers. Then comes the leak. Then comes the reckoning. And that's exactly where we stand. The reckoning phase. The point where secrets no longer stay buried, and where truth and image collide. Because if Harry truly has been told that the king's decision favors him over William, then we're not just talking about family drama. We're talking about a constitutional crisis. But before you decide whether this is fantasy or fact, you need to know what happened next. The night Harry was called back to Clarence House. The night his father finally said the words that changed everything. The night the future king was chosen in a room no one else was supposed to enter. Because what was said behind those walls, what Charles whispered that night, would not only redefine the monarchy, but would ignite the greatest royal storm since the abdication of Edward VIII. And it would leave everyone, from the palace staff to the press, asking the same burning question. Was this the king's will, or his mistake? What happened that night would set off a chain of events so shocking, so deeply personal, that even the crown itself trembled under the weight of what came next. And that's where our story truly begins. Because that meeting was only the beginning of the royal bombshell that would shake the world. The night was cold, silent, and painted in a soft London drizzle, the kind of rain that seemed to carry secrets. Clarence House stood still, its grand windows dimmed except for one faint glow on the upper floor. Inside, a man stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice low but heavy with tension. It was Prince Harry. And in that moment, everything he thought he knew about his life was about to change forever. The call had come suddenly. No warning, no explanation, just a private number flashing on his phone at 11:37 p.m. Come to Clarence House. Alone. The voice was unmistakable. His father's. Calm but urgent, the kind of tone that made Harry's pulse quicken. What could possibly demand a secret meeting in the dead of night? Why now, after months of silence, public spats, and icy distance? He didn't tell Meghan. He couldn't. She was asleep back at their California home, unaware that across the ocean, her husband was being summoned by the very institution he'd tried to escape. He booked a private flight immediately, his mind swirling with possibilities, an apology, a reconciliation, or something darker. As the jet cut through the clouds toward Heathrow, Harry's mind replayed his father's words from years ago. One day, you'll understand what it means to carry the weight of the crown. Back then, he'd laughed it off. But tonight, those words felt like a premonition. By the time the car pulled up to Clarence House, the streets were empty. London slept, unaware that history was stirring awake behind the palace gates. The guard at the gate didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and opened the door. Harry walked through the familiar hallways, walls lined with portraits of ancestors who looked down with judgment in their painted eyes. And there he was, King Charles, sitting at his desk, reading glasses perched low, a sealed envelope in front of him. No greetings, no hugs, just a long, measured stare. The kind of look that said more than words ever could. "Sit down, Harry," the king said finally. His tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. It carried the weight of something final, something inevitable. Harry sat. His palms were damp. He glanced at the envelope, its red wax seal glinting in the lamplight. "What's this?" he asked. Charles leaned back, exhaling slowly. "A decision. One that has been made with great consideration." There was silence. The clock ticked loudly on the wall, each second stretching into eternity. "About what?" Harry asked, though part of him already knew this wasn't just about family. It was bigger. Charles's gaze dropped to the envelope. "About the future of the monarchy." Those words hit like thunder. Harry froze. "What do you mean?" Charles didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood, walked to the window, and looked out into the fog. "You've seen what's happened to this family," he said quietly. "The fractures, the scandals, the press feeding on our pain. The crown is no longer what it was. It needs to adapt, or it will die." Harry listened, unsure where this was leading. "And you think I can fix that?" he asked, half in disbelief. Charles turned, his expression unreadable. "I think you might be the only one who can." The room seemed to shrink. The air grew heavier. For a moment, Harry thought he'd misheard. His heart pounded in his chest. "What are you saying, father?" The king's eyes softened. "I've made my decision about succession," he said slowly. "When the time comes, the crown will pass to you." Silence. Then disbelief. "That's not possible," Harry whispered. "William is the heir. Everyone knows that. You can't just—" Charles interrupted. "I can, Harry. The law allows for a monarch to express their will in matters of succession, should circumstances demand it. It's not about tradition anymore. It's about survival." Harry stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "This is madness," he said, shaking his head. "You can't do this to William." To the country. Charles's voice remained steady. I'm not doing this to anyone. I'm doing this for the monarchy. William has become too rigid, too political. He sees the crown as a shield. You see it as a bridge. That's what people need now. Harry felt his throat tighten. You're asking me to take on something I've spent years running from. No, Charles said quietly. I'm asking you to return to who you were always meant to be. The words cut deep. Harry looked away, memories flooding his mind. Diana's laughter, her warnings about the palace, her love for her sons. She always said you'd understand one day, Charles added softly. That stopped Harry cold. What do you mean? Charles hesitated, then gestured toward the envelope. She left something for you. Something I wasn't meant to show you until now. Harry stared at the wax seal. His hands trembled as he reached out. A letter. Charles nodded. Your mother wrote it before Paris. The room fell silent again. The faint hum of the rain outside seemed to echo against the walls. Harry carefully broke the seal. Inside was a folded piece of paper, slightly yellowed with time. He recognized her handwriting instantly. Elegant, looping, unmistakable. My darling Harry, it began. If you're reading this, it means life has taken the turns I feared it might. I've always believed you have the heart to lead with kindness, even when the world teaches cruelty. Remember this, crowns don't make kings. Character does. And when the time comes, trust your heart, not the hierarchy. Harry's eyes blurred. His mother's words felt like they were speaking across time itself. She knew, he whispered. Charles watched quietly, his expression a mixture of guilt and resolve. She did, he said. And so do I. Harry folded the letter carefully, his mind racing. Every instinct told him this was wrong, that it would destroy everything. But another part of him, a part buried deep beneath years of rebellion and resentment, felt something else. Destiny. Why now? He asked finally. Why tell me this now? Charles sighed. Because I don't know how much time I have left, he admitted. And because the world is changing faster than the crown can keep up. The people need someone they can believe in again. Someone who understands them, not just rules over them. Harry looked down at the letter again. William will never forgive you for this, he said quietly. Charles's gaze hardened. I don't expect him to. But history rarely forgives anyone. It only remembers the ones who had the courage to change it. The room felt colder now. The clock ticked louder. Harry's hands shook slightly as he placed the letter back in the envelope. If you do this, he said, there's no going back. I know, Charles replied. Neither for me, nor for you. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, echoing the storm building inside both men. Does anyone else know? Harry asked. Charles hesitated. Only a few trusted advisors. And now you. The weight of it all pressed down on him. The choice. The responsibility. The betrayal it would unleash. He wanted to refuse, to walk out and pretend this conversation had never happened. But something stopped him. His mother's words, echoing in his mind. Trust your heart, not the hierarchy. He took a slow breath. If this is true, he said finally, then everything will change. Everything. Charles nodded solemnly. It already has. For a long time, neither spoke. The air was thick with unspoken truths. Finally, Charles reached for a folder on his desk and slid it toward him. This outlines what must be prepared in the coming months, he said. You'll need to be discreet. The press cannot know until the appropriate time. Harry didn't touch it. You're asking me to live a lie. I'm asking you to protect a legacy, Charles replied. Until you're ready to claim it. The words lingered like smoke. Harry rose slowly, his legs unsteady. And what happens when William finds out? Charles's expression darkened. He already suspects. That's why you must be careful. He's not ready to accept what must be. Harry stared at him in disbelief. You think he'll just step aside? You think the people will let this happen? Charles looked weary, older than his years. They will, if they believe it's my will. The monarchy has survived worse than this. Harry turned toward the door, his thoughts a storm of confusion, fear, and reluctant awe. He wanted to shout, to demand that this all be undone. But instead, he found himself whispering, I never wanted this. I know, Charles said softly. That's why you're the right one. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, streaking down the windows like tears. Harry paused at the doorway, glancing back one last time at the father he barely recognized, a man burdened by both guilt and vision. Father, he said quietly, if this goes wrong. It won't, Charles interrupted. It can't. Harry nodded slowly, unsure if he believed it. He left the room, the letter still clutched in his hand, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and destiny. As he stepped into the cold night air, the city lights flickered through the mist, glowing like distant embers. The sound of Big Ben echoed faintly through the streets, 12 chimes marking midnight. A new day, a new secret. He climbed into the waiting car, silent, staring out the window as the palace disappeared into the fog. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Just 5 words. They know. Be careful. W. Harry's chest tightened. He read it again. W. William. So it was true. William knew. And that could only mean one thing. The battle for the crown had already begun. What came next would test blood, loyalty, and the very meaning of brotherhood itself. Because now, the truth was out, and someone inside the palace wasn't going to let it stay buried for long. Harry didn't sleep that night. How could he? The weight of his father's words pressed on his chest like a stone he couldn't breathe around. Every sound, the rain on the window, the ticking clock beside the bed, the echo of his own heartbeat, reminded him that the monarchy itself might have just shifted course in that single, impossible conversation. But something else wouldn't stop clawing at his mind. That text. They know. Be careful. W. William. Harry stared at his phone, the message glowing in the darkness. Did William really know? Was he warning him or threatening him? The two brothers hadn't spoken properly in months, not since their last explosive argument at Frogmore. He could still hear William's voice echoing through the corridors that night, accusing him of betrayal, of abandoning duty, of turning his back on everything their mother stood for. Harry had shouted back, "You don't own her legacy, William." That had been the last straw. Now, after all that, a message from him? A warning? Or something far worse? He couldn't tell. By dawn, Harry was already pacing. The palace was waking up, servants moving quietly, the smell of fresh coffee drifting through the hall. He stared out the window at the gardens, the same gardens his mother once walked in, and wondered what she'd think of all this. Would she be proud? Angry? Heartbroken? A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Sir Alistair Hensley, Charles's oldest advisor, the man who'd been with the king since his days as Prince of Wales. Harry hadn't seen him in years. "His Majesty requests your presence again," Hensley said. Harry frowned. Now. Immediately. Something in the man's tone felt different, sharp, deliberate. As they walked through the corridors, Harry noticed the staff avoiding his eyes. They moved faster than usual, whispering to one another when they thought he couldn't hear. The air felt charged, like a storm about to break. When they reached the king's study, Harry noticed the envelope from the night before was gone. In its place sat a single folder marked Confidential, Royal Succession Directive. Charles didn't look up right away. He was reading a document, face tense. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "There's been a development," he said. Harry's stomach turned. "What kind of development?" "The letter," Charles said. "It's been leaked." Harry froze. "What? How?" Charles looked up, his expression grim. "Someone in this house took a photograph of it, your mother's handwriting, her words, and sent it to an external source. The press hasn't published it yet, but they will. And when they do, speculation will explode." Harry's pulse quickened. "You said only a few people knew." "Yes," Charles said slowly. "Which means someone among them betrayed us." Harry's mind raced. "William," he muttered. Charles didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence said it all. The king rubbed his temple, weary. "He confronted me early this morning," Charles admitted. "He demanded to know if what he'd heard was true." "And you told him?" Harry pressed. "I told him the truth," Charles said. "That the monarchy must adapt. That he will continue to serve, but the future will belong to you." Harry felt a rush of nausea. "Father, why would you tell him now? You've just given him motive to fight this." Charles's eyes narrowed. "Do you think this decision was made lightly?" He needed to know eventually. "Eventually," Harry snapped. "Not immediately after you tell me." The tension between them flared, the unspoken years of resentment burning through the air. Charles sighed, setting the papers aside. "It's done," he said. "But we must prepare for what comes next. William will not take this quietly. You must be careful who you speak to. The press will come for you first." Harry exhaled shakily. "So this is it. The war begins." Charles's tone softened. "It's not a war, Harry. It's evolution." Harry gave a bitter laugh. Evolution doesn't usually come with betrayal headlines. He turned and walked to the window again, watching as the first journalists began gathering outside the gates. Word was already spreading. Clarence's house was trending on social media. The whispers had become thunder. Charles stood behind him, his reflection visible in the glass. "Your mother once said the monarchy needed a human face," he said quietly. "That people would no longer follow institutions, only individuals they could trust. That's what this is about. Not power. Redemption." Harry didn't respond. He couldn't, because redemption and betrayal were now intertwined, and he didn't know which one he was walking toward. By the time he left Clarence's house that afternoon, London was buzzing. Headlines screamed, "Secret letter from Diana found." Could Harry be next in line? News vans lined the streets, commentators speculating endlessly. Harry's driver leaned toward him. "Where to, sir?" He hesitated. Kensington Palace. It was a reckless decision, but he needed answers from the only person who could give them. When the car stopped outside the palace gates, he saw the familiar outline of William's residence. He took a deep breath, stepped out, and walked through the same doors they'd once raced through as boys. William was waiting for him. No guards, no formality, just him, standing by the fireplace, jaw tight, eyes cold. "So," William said, his voice sharp, "it's true." Harry met his gaze. "You shouldn't believe everything you read." "Don't play games with me," William snapped. "I know about the letter. I know what Father said." Harry clenched his fists. "Then you know I didn't ask for any of this." "That's the problem," William shot back. "You never ask. You just destroy everything in your path and call it destiny." The room crackled with anger. These weren't just brothers arguing anymore. They were rivals standing on opposite sides of a crown. "Do you think I wanted this?" Harry said, voice rising. "Do you think I'd trade my life for that throne? I left for a reason, William. I wanted peace. But you—" "Peace?" William cut him off. "You call leaking private conversations peace? You call throwing our family to the wolves peace? Spare me your noble speeches, Harry. You've been craving attention since the day you left." Harry's jaw tightened. "And you've been craving control since the day you were born." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was louder than any shout. Finally, William stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't understand what you've done. You've set something in motion you can't stop." Harry frowned. "What do you mean?" William's expression was unreadable. "You think Father made his choice freely? You think this was about your character?" He leaned in. "You're being used, Harry. He's playing you, the same way he played all of us." Harry's stomach turned. "You're lying." William's eyes hardened. "Am I? Then ask yourself why he showed you that letter now, after all these years. Why not before? Why not when you were still part of the family?" Harry's pulse raced. "You think he's lying about Mother's wishes?" "I think," William said quietly, "that he's rewriting history to save his own legacy. And he's using you to do it." The words stung more than Harry wanted to admit, because deep down, he'd asked himself the same question on that long flight home. Why now? But before he could respond, William stepped back. "Go," he said, "before I say something I can't take back." Harry hesitated, searching his brother's face for a trace of the bond they once shared. There was none, only anger and fear. He turned to leave. But as he reached the door, William's voice came again, colder than before. "Whatever Father promised you," he said, "you'll never wear that crown. Not while I'm alive." Harry stopped in his tracks. He turned, but William was already gone, disappearing down the corridor. Outside, the press had grown louder. Microphones thrust toward him, cameras flashing. "Prince Harry, is it true? Has King Charles named you his successor? What about Prince William?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. He climbed into the car, slammed the door, and told the driver to go anywhere, just away. As the palace faded in the rearview mirror, he stared out at the city. He thought about his father's face, his mother's words, his brother's threat. The crown wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a weapon, and as much as he wanted to run, he knew he couldn't. Because whether he accepted it or not, the fight for the throne had already begun, and it was no longer a matter of family. It was a matter of survival. But what Harry didn't know, as his car disappeared into the gray London fog, was that someone else was already pulling strings behind the scenes. Someone who had everything to gain from tearing the brothers apart. And when that person finally made their move, the monarchy itself would be left trembling. The following morning, the world was no longer whispering, it was roaring. Newspapers screamed headlines across front pages. King Charles secretly names Harry as future monarch. William betrayed? Royal succession bombshell rocks Britain. Helicopters hovered over palace grounds. Crowds gathered at the gates with handmade signs, some reading Harry for king, others declaring, William is our future. The monarchy had faced scandals before, but nothing like this. This wasn't about love affairs or bad press. This was about legitimacy, about the future of the crown itself. Harry watched the chaos unfold from the back seat of a tinted car parked 2 blocks away from Buckingham Palace. He could see the commotion, the camera crews, the angry citizens, the stunned royal guards who didn't know whether to salute or brace for impact. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass and exhaled. "What have I done?" he muttered under his breath. "You didn't do this," a voice said beside him. It was Sir Alistair Hensley again, his expression calm but tense. "The leak didn't come from you. It came from inside." Harry turned sharply. "Inside where?" "Clarence House," Hensley said. "But we don't yet know who. The photograph of the letter was taken hours before you arrived last night." Harry frowned. "So it was already compromised?" "Yes, meaning this wasn't about exposing the truth. It was about control. Someone wanted this story out before the king could make it official." Harry's stomach twisted. "You mean to make me the villain?" Hensley nodded grimly. "And it's working." He handed Harry a tablet. The headlines were brutal. Harry's power play, the spare who would be king. William blindsided by his brother's ambition. Charles's betrayal of tradition. Every word painted Harry as a schemer, a manipulator. And at the center of it all, the letter from Diana. Harry scrolled down, reading the leaked lines, his mother's words stripped of context, twisted for narrative. "When the time comes, trust your heart, not the hierarchy." The tabloids framed it as a prophecy that Diana had foreseen Harry's rise. But to others, it looked like the monarchy's moral collapse. "Do you know what this means?" Harry whispered. "They're going to tear her memory apart just to destroy me." Hensley said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Back inside Buckingham Palace, a storm was brewing. King Charles sat with Camilla, both staring at the morning papers. She was livid. "You've gone too far this time, Charles," she hissed. "This family barely survived Megxit. Now you've started a war between your sons." Charles rubbed his forehead. "You think I wanted this?" he said. "You think I enjoy watching my children turn into enemies?" Camilla crossed her arms. "Then fix it. Make a statement. Deny it before it's too late." Charles shook his head. "It's already too late. If I deny it now, it will look like fear. If I confirm it, it becomes treason against tradition. Either way, the monarchy loses." Camilla leaned forward. "Then you'd better decide which son you're willing to lose, because one of them will fall before this is over." Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, William was pacing like a caged lion. His aides watched nervously as he slammed his phone down onto the table. "He's playing the victim again," William shouted. "Look at this. People actually think father chose him out of love. They think I'm the villain." His press secretary spoke carefully. "Sir, perhaps we should issue a calm statement." "Calm?" William snapped. "The country is calling me unfit to rule, and you want calm?" He turned toward the window, fists clenched. "He's stolen my mother's memory, my father's trust, and now he wants the crown. But I won't let him." The words were barely above a whisper, but the room froze. Even his aides exchanged uneasy glances. Harry had no idea that while he was being painted as a usurper, William was already calling emergency meetings with the Privy Council. He was determined to prove that his father's supposed decision was illegal, unconstitutional, and invalid under the Royal Marriages Act and the Act of Settlement. If Charles truly had declared Harry next in line, he would face not only public backlash, but political scrutiny. Back in the car, Hensley's phone buzzed. He looked down, then passed it to Harry. "You need to see this." It was a leaked video clip, blurry but unmistakable. It showed a figure resembling King Charles speaking in what looked like his study. The audio was distorted, but a few words were clear enough to ignite a firestorm. "Harry must carry it forward. He is the one." Harry's heart dropped. "That's my father." "It appears so," Hensley said. "But notice the cut. It's been edited. Someone spliced that footage to make it sound like he was naming you his successor." "So it's fake?" "Partially," Hensley said. "Real footage, manipulated context. It's designed to confuse." Harry leaned back, closing his eyes. "This is a trap," he said. "They're trying to turn us against each other completely." And it was working. Across the UK, public opinion had split in two. Supporters of Harry flooded social media with messages like, "Diana's prophecy fulfilled," and "Harry is the people's king." Meanwhile, loyalists of William accused Harry of staging a coup, calling him the Californian usurper. Every news anchor, every talk show, every dinner table conversation, all revolved around one impossible question: who should truly be the next king? By nightfall, the palace was on lockdown. Charles canceled all public appearances. Meghan, still in California, was bombarded by reporters outside their home. When one shouted, "Is Harry going to be king?" she only gave a tight, nervous smile and said, "You'll have to ask him." That clip went viral within hours. Inside his temporary suite at Claridge's, Harry sat alone, phone buzzing nonstop. Messages from friends, distant relatives, even old army mates flooded in. Some congratulated him. Others begged him to deny it. And one message stood out among the rest, a voice note from someone unexpected, Princess Anne. He played it. "Harry," her voice said, steady and stern, "you're in over your head. The institution won't let this happen, not without blood. Whatever your father told you, remember this: the crown isn't given. It's taken. Be very careful." Her tone was chilling, almost prophetic. Harry replayed the message twice, staring at the wall. At that same moment, deep within the palace, an emergency meeting of senior royals was taking place. Charles sat at the head of the table, flanked by Camilla and a few advisors. William wasn't there, by his own choice. Lord Reeve, the senior constitutional advisor, spoke first. "Your Majesty, this crisis is unprecedented. The succession cannot be changed verbally. It requires both parliamentary consent and legal certification under the royal prerogative. Until such documentation exists, the public statement has no standing." Charles nodded slowly. "And yet the people already believe it has." Then, Reeve said cautiously, "Perhaps we should let that belief die naturally." Camilla interjected sharply. "And what of Harry? He's already been crucified in the press. Do we just let him hang while the palace stays silent?" Charles's voice dropped. "If I deny it, I betray my word. If I confirm it, I destroy my firstborn." Reeve folded his hands. "Then perhaps, Your Majesty, it is time for a third option, one that preserves both sons, at least in appearance." Charles raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Reeve leaned forward. "A public reconciliation. You appear with both princes, side by side, to announce unity. You needn't confirm nor deny anything. Only remind the nation that your reign values family and continuity. Let speculation cool while you decide your next move privately." Camilla nodded reluctantly. "It might work." "For now." Charles sighed, weary. "Arrange it." But the damage was already far deeper than any statement could repair. Because while the king plotted a temporary peace, a very different kind of meeting was taking place across the city, one that could shatter everything. In a quiet apartment overlooking the Thames, a shadowy figure was uploading the unedited version of the video, the real footage, the full conversation, recorded from within Clarence's house. In it, Charles's voice was clear, unwavering. "When the time comes, the crown shall pass not by birthright, but by worth. And I have made my choice." He looked directly at Harry and said, "It's you." The upload bar reached 100%. Within minutes, the world would see it. Unfiltered, undeniable, and irreversible. What came next would make the previous day's headlines look like whispers in comparison. Because now, there was no speculation, no rumor, no denial. The king's words were real. And by morning, Britain would awaken to a truth that could either redefine the monarchy or destroy it forever. Phones rang through the night like alarm bells across London. By dawn, there was no denying it. The footage was real. Every network had played it, analyzed it, slowed it down frame by frame. "It's you," King Charles said, clear as day, staring straight at his youngest son. Harry's face filled every screen from London to Los Angeles. His name trended worldwide. Hashtag King Harry topped social media in less than an hour. And just beneath it, hashtag Not My King William. The monarchy had never seen such division in modern times. Parliament demanded answers. The Church of England called an emergency session. Crowds surrounded Buckingham Palace chanting two different slogans: Harry for the people, and protect the heir. The crown, centuries old and untouchable, was suddenly fragile, human, trembling in the public eye. Harry sat frozen in his hotel room, the curtains drawn tight. The light from the TV flickered over his face as pundits dissected every syllable of his father's voice. When the time comes, it's you. He had begged his father for a sign of trust for years. Now he'd been given one, but in the worst way possible. His phone buzzed. It was Megan. Her voice was tight with panic. "Harry, what is happening? They're camping outside our house. People are shouting, 'Long live the new king.'" "This is insane." "I didn't leak it," he said. "I swear I didn't." "I know you didn't," she said. "But it doesn't matter now, does it? The world thinks you're next. What are you going to do?" Harry rubbed his face, exhausted. "I don't know," he muttered. "I need to talk to him. I need to talk to my father." But Charles wasn't taking calls. He was under siege himself, the Prime Minister demanding clarification, the Archbishop insisting on constitutional consultation, Camilla insisting on silence. Within hours, the palace issued a short, ambiguous statement. His Majesty's comments were made in a private context. The line of succession remains as established by law. But the damage was irreversible. The king hadn't denied it. He hadn't corrected it. He'd only deepened the mystery. That afternoon, the streets of London looked like a royal fever dream. Vendors were already selling King Harry mugs and t-shirts. Tourists posed with fake crowns. But among the cheers, there was tension, anger brewing beneath the laughter. William finally broke his silence. Standing before the press outside Kensington Palace, his expression tight but calm, he said, "The monarchy is built on duty, not desire." My father's words were taken out of context. I remain committed to my role and to the people I will one day serve. It was measured, diplomatic, and cold. No mention of Harry by name. No emotion. Just steel. But behind closed doors, he was seething. He had met with advisors, lawyers, even members of Parliament. One aide described it as controlled fury. William had made up his mind. If his father would not undo this publicly, he would do it privately, through force of influence. Meanwhile, Harry couldn't stay hidden forever. Reporters were tracking his every move. Helicopters followed his car as he made his way to Windsor that evening under cover of fog. The gates opened for him, but the silence inside was deafening. Charles was waiting in the study, the same one where it all began. This time, there were no letters, no candles, no calm. Only confrontation. Harry closed the door behind him. "You saw the video." "I did," Charles said softly. "And you still haven't denied it." Charles looked up from his desk, his face pale and lined. "How could I? It's the truth." "The truth." Harry's voice cracked. "You've started a war in this family. You've made me a target." Charles stood. "The war began long before last night, Harry. It began the day the monarchy became a spectacle instead of a symbol." Harry slammed his hand on the desk. "You had no right to drag me into it." "I didn't drag you," Charles said evenly. "I chose you." The words hit like a hammer. "You don't get to choose me," Harry said, voice trembling. "Not after everything. You can't fix your mistakes by destroying William's life." Charles's eyes softened. "I'm not trying to destroy him. I'm trying to save this family before it eats itself alive." Harry turned away, pacing. "You think this will save it? You've humiliated your heir. You've divided the country. You've made me look like some power-hungry pretender." Charles stepped closer. "The people see you differently, Harry. They see your mother in you. They see compassion, humanity. That's what this institution needs to survive." Harry shook his head. "You're rewriting history to justify guilt. You don't love me more, father. You just hate what William reminds you of, yourself." The king's face hardened. "You think this is about me? This is about the crown. It has no loyalty, no sentiment. It survives by choosing who can carry it, not who wants it." Harry's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then it's not worth saving." For a long moment, neither moved. The only sound was the faint tick of the clock on the wall. Then Charles said quietly, "You may not believe me now, but one day, you will understand why this had to happen." Harry turned toward the door. "You've turned me into the enemy, father. Don't expect me to play along." As he left, the king called after him. "If you walk away now, you'll lose control of the story. And when that happens, they'll crown whoever they can control, not whoever's worthy." Harry paused at the doorway, but didn't turn back. That night, the video continued to dominate every screen. The BBC aired panels arguing over royal precedent. Some historians said the monarch could express his will to change succession, but only with Parliament's approval. Others claimed the Act of Settlement made it impossible. The uncertainty turned the entire nation into amateur lawyers. Across the Atlantic, American networks fanned the flames. Talk shows debated whether King Harry would modernize the monarchy or end it entirely. Meghan stayed inside their Montecito home, blinds drawn, scrolling through endless speculation. Her phone vibrated constantly, friends, publicists, even Netflix executives asking the same question. Is it true? But in London, something else was happening. Deep within the royal household, staff began taking sides. Some quietly moved to Windsor to work under Charles. Others pledged loyalty to William. Even bodyguards were being reassigned overnight. It was becoming clear this wasn't just a family feud. It was a civil war wrapped in royal silk. And as the cracks spread through the palace, one name began to surface: the person who leaked the footage. It hadn't come from the media, nor from Clarence House security. It had come from someone much closer. An email surfaced, an encrypted message traced back to an internal palace network. The signature line stunned investigators. C.A. Camilla. At least, that's what the metadata suggested. But whether she'd done it herself or been set up was unclear. When the news reached Charles, he was livid. She would never, he said. But the evidence was mounting. A time-stamped backup, a deleted message recovered by digital forensics, and a trail of communication logs all pointed back to the Queen Consort's private account. Harry heard about it through an anonymous text message. Ask your stepmother who wanted you king the most. He stared at it for a long time, unable to move. Could it be true? Could Camilla have leaked it to force Charles's hand? The thought made his skin crawl. Because if she had, it meant she wasn't trying to crown him. She was trying to destroy both sons to protect her own position. Later that night, as Harry walked through the quiet streets near Hyde Park, a black car slowed beside him. A window rolled down. A voice said softly, "You're not safe here, sir." Harry turned. It was one of his old royal security officers. "What do you mean?" "Orders are shifting," the man said. "We've been told to stand down from your protection detail. Officially, you're on your own until this confusion clears up." Harry stared, disbelief turning to anger. "My father approved this." "I don't know," the guard said. "But I'd advise you to lay low. There are people who don't want this decision to become reality, at any cost." The car drove off, leaving Harry standing alone in the London fog, the sound of Big Ben echoing faintly in the distance. He looked up at the palace lights glowing faintly in the night sky. Somewhere inside, his father was fighting for control, his brother was plotting defense, and the woman he trusted least might have just lit the fuse that would destroy them all. He pulled his coat tighter. The air felt colder now, heavy with danger. He could almost feel eyes watching him from the shadows. He didn't know who to trust anymore. Not his father, not his brother, not the institution that had stripped him bare and now called him its savior. And as he disappeared down the foggy street, one thought burned through his mind, louder than the city, heavier than the crown itself. If someone was willing to leak a king's secret, what else were they willing to do? What came next would answer that question, in a way that would shock not just Britain, but the entire world. The next morning brought more than just gray skies over London. It brought an escalating storm that Harry could no longer ignore. Everywhere he turned, his name was being dissected, debated, and weaponized. Social media churned with speculation, rumors, and outright threats. Every headline, every viral clip, seemed to pull him further into a narrative he hadn't written. A story in which he was not merely a participant, but a central figure in a battle for the crown. His phone rang constantly, vibrating like a warning siren. Messages from Meghan were now tinged with desperation. "Harry, they're mobilizing. You need to come home. This is bigger than you realize." He rubbed his eyes. "Home," he muttered. "Is there even such a thing anymore?" Because home wasn't where he felt safe. It was where the world could find him. And right now, the world, a world of reporters, political advisors, palace staff, and family, was hunting him. He slipped into a nondescript black sedan and headed toward Windsor, where he hoped clarity might be found. But as he approached the gates, the first signs of organized chaos became apparent. Supporters of William had gathered outside, holding banners, chanting slogans, their faces flushed with righteous indignation. On the other side, Harry's supporters waved placards depicting him with a crown, a symbol of hope and change. Even from the distance, Harry could feel the tension coiling in the air, thick as smoke. This wasn't just a family feud. It had grown into a public spectacle of unprecedented proportions. Inside the castle, the atmosphere was equally tense. Charles sat in his private chambers, his hands clasped tightly, reviewing correspondence from advisors and government officials. Camilla hovered nearby, her posture rigid, her gaze sharp. The storm they had inadvertently unleashed seemed to have taken on a life of its own. The king's voice was tight as he spoke. "We have to contain this before it escalates further. Parliament is questioning the legitimacy of my words. William is preparing legal maneuvers. And Harry," he paused, glancing toward the window, as if the foggy London streets could answer for his son's intentions. "Harry is moving fast. Too fast." Camilla's lips pressed into a thin line. "You underestimated William's resolve. And now, with Harry out in the open, the people are choosing sides." Charles exhaled sharply. "The people will always choose what they understand, Camilla. That's the danger. They don't see the nuance. They see the spectacle." Meanwhile, Harry made his way through the castle corridors, guided by a trusted aide who had accompanied him discreetly from London. Every step echoed. Every shadow seemed to hide eyes watching his movements. The corridors were familiar, yet suddenly alien. Every portrait of past monarchs felt like judgmental witnesses to the unfolding chaos. He arrived at a private chamber where one of Charles's closest advisors was waiting. Papers, legal documents, and sealed envelopes littered the table. "Sir," the advisor said cautiously, "the situation is volatile. William has retained top constitutional lawyers. They're drafting motions to challenge the legitimacy of your father's words. If this escalates to Parliament, it could trigger a full-blown constitutional review." Harry ran a hand over his face. "I didn't ask for any of this," he whispered. "I didn't want this war." The advisor's expression was unreadable. "No one ever wants it. But power doesn't wait for consent." Outside the chamber, footsteps approached. Harry turned, expecting an aide or guard. Instead, it was his brother, William. The tension between them was palpable. Each step William took radiating authority and controlled fury. "You're here," William said simply, stopping a few feet away. "You can't hide anymore." Harry's jaw tightened. "I didn't come to hide." "Then why are you running?" William's voice was quiet, but every word cut deep. "Why are you letting them paint you as a king in waiting when you have no right?" Harry felt a mix of anger and disbelief. "No right," he echoed. "Father made it clear. He chose me." William's eyes narrowed. He said words. "Words don't make law, Harry. They don't make a monarch. And you know it. Do you think the Constitution cares about your feelings? About what your mother might have wanted?" Harry's hands trembled slightly. "It's not about law. It's about trust. About what's right." William laughed bitterly. "Trust? Right? That's a luxury for those who don't have a crown to defend. You think this is right? You think this will save anyone? You're blind, Harry. Completely blind." The two brothers stood in silence for a long moment, the air between them thick with history, resentment, and unspoken grief. Neither moved. Neither blinked. Finally, Harry spoke. "If you think I'm just going to step aside, you're wrong. I won't betray her memory again. I won't stand by while the institution turns her legacy into a weapon against me." William's expression darkened. "Then prepare yourself. Because no one, not even our father, can protect you from what's coming." As Harry left the room, the palace seemed to close in around him. Every corridor, every door, every shadow felt like a potential threat. Outside, the fog had thickened, obscuring the streets and turning familiar paths into unknown terrain. When he stepped into the carriage waiting to take him back to his temporary residence, his phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. "They're not playing anymore. Meet me at the bridge at midnight. Alone. Bring nothing." Harry stared at it, heart racing. Every instinct screamed danger, but a deeper part of him knew he had to go. Someone was orchestrating the next move, and if he wanted to survive this, he needed answers. As the carriage rolled through the misty streets of London, Harry's mind raced. Who sent the message? Was it an ally? A spy? Or a trap set by someone inside the palace itself? Someone willing to destroy everything, even family, to consolidate power? The line between friend and foe had blurred. The crown, once a symbol of unity, had become a weapon. and Harry was at the center of it. By midnight, the fog had thickened into a shroud. The bridge spanned the Thames like a sentinel over the dark waters below. Harry's footsteps echoed with each step, every sound amplified in the quiet night. He glanced over his shoulder. Nothing. Just the fog, curling like smoke over the river. A figure emerged from the mist. Hooded, shadowed, identity obscured. Harry froze. "Who are you?" The figure stepped closer, voice low and urgent. "If you want to survive the next 48 hours, you need to trust me. And more importantly, you need to be ready." Harry swallowed. Ready for what? The figure's lips curled into a faint, almost sinister smile. "The truth about your father's choice. About the crown. About William. And about who will stop at nothing to take it from you." Before Harry could respond, the figure vanished into the fog. Alone, on the bridge, Harry realized the magnitude of what he was facing. It wasn't just a family feud. It wasn't just the media circus. It wasn't just the eyes of the nation. It was a battle for the very heart of the monarchy, a battle that would force him to question every bond he had ever trusted. And as the clock struck midnight, a faint ripple passed over the Thames, as if the river itself carried a warning. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. But not this one. What came next would expose betrayal at the highest levels, test loyalty beyond comprehension, and reveal that in the royal game, there is no such thing as safety, only survival. The next morning, Harry awoke to a city in chaos. London had become a theater of uncertainty, with every street corner, every TV screen, every social media feed pulsing with speculation about the succession bombshell. People were divided. Some celebrated him as the rightful heir, a man of compassion and modernity who could bring the monarchy into a new era. Others denounced him as a usurper, a traitor to tradition who had overstepped boundaries he didn't even understand. He sat at the edge of his bed, the morning light casting a pale glow over the room, reflecting the weight in his mind. Every moment now seemed to carry the potential for disaster. Every message pinged his phone with more rumors, more news updates, more questions he couldn't answer. Meghan's texts were urgent. "Harry, they're calling this a constitutional crisis. You need to be careful. Don't speak to anyone outside our circle." He ran a hand over his face, exhausted, frustrated, and scared. Every instinct screamed that the palace, the media, even his own family were aligned against him. And deep down, he realized no one outside could be trusted. The only path forward was to confront the situation head-on, to go directly to the source, Clarence House. By midday, Harry had arranged a discreet meeting with Sir Alistair Hensley, the king's most trusted advisor. They met in a small private office near St. James's Park, the walls lined with books and portraits of past monarchs, silently observing the unfolding drama. Hensley didn't waste words. "Sir, the situation has escalated beyond expectation. William has retained constitutional lawyers, and Parliament is demanding answers. The press, well, the press is relentless. They've taken your father's words and spun them into a narrative that paints you as a power-hungry prince, ready to overthrow tradition." Harry exhaled sharply. "Then what do we do?" he asked, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. "We adapt," Hensley said calmly. "The king cannot deny what he said, nor can he publicly confirm it. But he can shape perception, and perception matters just as much as law." Harry ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "Shape perception? The entire world is watching. They're already divided. People are cheering me, people are cursing me. And William, he's going to fight back. He'll stop at nothing to protect what he believes is rightfully his." Hensley leaned forward. "Exactly. Which is why discretion is paramount. We need a plan that neutralizes threats from every side. William, the press, Parliament, even factions within the palace itself." Harry stopped pacing. "You mean, fight a war on every front, all at once?" Hensley nodded. "Precisely. And you need to start by understanding that the palace is not a monolith. Loyalty is fluid. Allies one day may become enemies the next. And in this situation, every step you take will be scrutinized, misinterpreted, and weaponized." Harry's stomach turned. "I didn't ask for this. I left that life for a reason. I wanted peace. And now, it's all crashing down around me." Hensley's expression softened slightly. "Peace is a luxury, sir. Now, it's about survival. and understanding the true dynamics at play. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were detailed briefings on William's movements, Charles's advisors, and a partially reconstructed timeline of how the leaked video spread. It included subtle indicators of who might be orchestrating events behind the scenes. Harry scanned the documents. "Camilla," he asked quietly, noticing a pattern in the data pointing toward communications associated with the Queen Consort. Hensley nodded. "It's possible. The metadata aligns with her access, though whether she acted independently or was manipulated is unclear. Either way, she is a factor you cannot ignore." Harry clenched his fists. "She'd do this to manipulate my father?" "She has a vested interest in controlling perception," Hensley said. "If she can direct who the public supports, she protects her position. And right now, you are the fulcrum." Harry stared at the floor, trying to process it all. His father had made a private decision. His brother was preparing legal and political maneuvers. Camilla might be plotting behind the scenes, and the public, the people, had already begun to take sides. Outside, London was alive with tension. Crowds still gathered near the palace gates, banners waving, chants rising in fervor. Some shouted in favor of Harry, others demanded William's protection. Helicopters hovered overhead, news vans lined the streets. It was a spectacle, a city turned stage for a drama centuries in the making. Back at Clarence House, Charles and his advisors convened urgently. The king, tired and weary, rubbed his temples. "We cannot deny Harry's role. The footage exists. It cannot be unspoken. And yet, William, he will not yield quietly."